Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Economic Development. What factors did the Prime Minister take into account when he agreed with Warner Brothers executives to change employment legislation in New Zealand?
The Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
That's not the question, Mr Speaker.
Point of order.
Point of order.
My apologies, Mr Speaker. My apologies. Mr Speaker.
Is the Minister okay now?
Yes.
The Honourable Jerry Brownlee answering the question.
Mr Speaker, well, Mr Speaker, there is a huge amount of public sentiment out there in favour of the Warner Brothers film to be made in New Zealand, the two Hobbit films, and I notice that the Labor Party have said that they're going to have a bloody battle in the House today to try and prevent the legislation going through that will facilitate that. Mr Speaker, I'm wearing my red tie so that no one will see that blood on my shirt. I noticed the member asking the questions wearing his brown corduroy trousers. I'd ask him what he's worried about.
Order, Order. Now, there was a little humour at the start there, but the question did ask what factors did the Prime Minister take into account when he agreed with Warner Brothers executives to change employment legislation in New Zealand. There's nothing political about that question. OK, a member interjected, but it was a reasonably humorous interjection, and the member responded with some good humour, and then did indicate one reason. So if that was the only reason, that's fine. But the question didn't justify the rest of what the Minister was saying. But if the Minister feels he's answered in terms of what factors, that's fine. The Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, a number of factors, including the uncertainty of the legal status of independent contractors in the film industry. The legislation will clarify the distinction between independent contractors and employees as it relates to the film production industry. It was also evident, Mr Speaker, that assurances from the CTU, while offered in a genuine way, were caveated by the call for a collective agreement on the Hobbit movie. And I think, sir, that served only to exacerbate the confusion around the status of contractors, which the government intends to clear up.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Was a reduction in protection for film workers designed to encourage investment in the Hobbit?
The Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, I completely reject any suggestion that any change to clarify the employment status of people who are engaged to perform tasks in the film industry is a reduction of protection.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Does he characterise the removal of the right to collectively bargain as an improvement or a reduction in the rights of the workers?
The Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, I'll take my lead from the thousands of workers who turned out on Labor Day to protest against the position that the Hobbit movies should be subject to collective agreements. Mr Speaker, I therefore cannot agree that it is a reduction in their rights.
Keith Locke.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Did Warner's require that changes to our industrial legislation be passed this week, therefore requiring urgency in Parliament today?
The Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, Warner Brothers didn't put any requirements on us to do anything. The New Zealand government has recognised that there were employment issues that needed to be sorted out, and we are going to move to clarify those. We think that the last 7 weeks have been shameful as far as the support of the film industry is concerned, and we are going to urgently move to fix that situation.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Which agencies gave him advice on this issue?
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, when it came to advice on whether or not there was an issue around the employment issue, we sought opinion from Crown Law, which confirmed that there were a number of anomalies that may need to be cleared up.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Was the Prime Minister cognizant of Clause 4, Article 1 of the Chinese Free Trade Agreement, which states the parties recognise that it is inappropriate to encourage investment by weakening or reducing the protections afforded in domestic labour laws, regulations, policies and practices when this decision was made.
The Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Yes. Yes, Mr Speaker, and I believe that on each of the points the member likes to raise there, we have acted opposite to the way he is suggesting.
Keith Locke.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Does the Prime Minister agree that in order to be sure about its consequences, changes in employment law should be informed by public submissions, particularly from employers, union representatives and lawyers? And if so, why is he rushing an employment law change through in urgency today?
The Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, I'm not speaking for the Prime Minister, but what I can tell the member is... No, I'm not. The question is to the Minister of Economic Development.
Point of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, this question was, as I'm sure you're aware, addressed to the Prime Minister and transferred to the Minister.
Order. It's not strictly a point of order at all. The government is at liberty to transfer questions to appropriate ministers, and the Minister on this occasion is answering as the Minister for Economic Development. He's not answering on behalf of the Prime Minister, so the Minister was quite correct. He's not answering on behalf of the Prime Minister. The Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, I can only point the member to a recent news poll which suggests that about 75% of respondents to that poll think that this was a good idea, 25% think it wasn't. That seems to me about right, according to the way we would observe public opinion on this matter.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard. Point of order, Keith Locke.
My question asked about a public submission process, not about an opinion poll of what people might have thought. That's different from a parliamentary submission process. The Prime Minister didn't really answer that question.
Well, actually, it's the Minister of Economic Development. But, because of the time period that elapsed between when the member asked his question, there was a point of order intervention there. I'll allow the member to repeat his question just so we all hear it accurately. Keith Locke.
Does the Minister agree that in order to be sure about its consequences, changes in employment law should be informed by public submissions, particularly from employers, union representatives and lawyers? If so, why is he rushing an employment law change through in urgency today?
The Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, in most cases, but not in this case.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Was the government aware through various news reports or directly from Warners that Ireland was the main alternative to New Zealand for filming The Hobbit?
The Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, that is not the information that we understood.
Keith Locke.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can the Minister confirm that later today New Zealand's sovereign parliament will be sitting under urgency to pass a new law at the request of a foreign multinational corporation?
The Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, I point to the latter part of that question. I choose to answer the latter part of that question, and the answer is no.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Did the Minister read the reports in US newspapers which indicate... Mr Speaker, are you a loser?
Order. The member will just ask his question.
Did the Minister read in the New York Times and other US newspapers that Ireland was the main alternative for Warners for the filming of The Hobbit? And if so, was he aware that the Irish government agreed on the 27th of September this year to extend collective bargaining in Ireland to actors for the first time?
The Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, no, I don't have as much time on my hands as the member to be able to read foreign newspapers, but what I would also say is that the member's supposition is simply incorrect.
Question. John Biscowan, supplementary question.
Supplementary to the Minister of Economic Development. What role did the various political parties in Parliament play in helping secure this deal?
The Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, central to the success of keeping